unmute.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We got you.
Yes, sorry. Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart, resident of 26 years in Millburn. I have quite a few questions and some things to read out. Beth, I think, McManus, sorry. I think that you said that the developer will be conducting remediation. And I know we just had a long conversation about who would pay, but you made this statement that the developer will be conducting remediation and answer to the question of who will pay for the remediation. I just want to be really clear about the words you used. The developer will be conducting, but we don't know who will be paying for remediation.
Let me be more clear. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to dodge the question. The township is not, the township is not conducting the remediation. We are not paying RPM development to do the remediation. We're not conducting pass-through billing, if you will. That remediation activity and the funding is going to be conducted by the developer. Okay.
Fully, cost-wise, actually doing the work. And then in terms of the quality, does the township have any jurisdiction over the quality of the remediation? Will we be able to make sure that it's done to the highest possible quality? How would that be determined? Is it during negotiation? There's, some remediation that could be done cursorily, and there's in-depth remediation. What standard is going to be applied? How is that determined?
So I can't speak to the specific standard just because I don't do remediation work, but what I can tell you is this remediation is going to be handled in a manner similar to what we'd see on any other property across the state, in the sense that there is an LSRP, a licensed site remediation professional that has been assigned to the site or assigned to the case, and that professional will oversee the remediation activities to ensure that the work plan to do the remediation meets state standards, and then that the actual remediation and the resulting remediated property meets those state standards.
Okay.
I believe that the municipalities generally are obligated to meet those state standards, and there's no reason, there's no option to deviate, at least in terms of having a lower state standard, a lower standard, and then less clean, if you will.
Okay. So then that, to really hold the person who's doing this remediation, the developer, hold their feet to the fire, is there going to be any liability, or is that standard as well in these types of developer agreements, that they retain liability given that they did the job?
There is probably a legal framework. I'm sure there's a legal framework in regard to liability for a property, but I really don't know it. And I have to, I'm sorry, but I've got to reiterate my earlier comments, which are liability and really the details of remediation. That is not that's really not subject to tonight's hearing. That's really that's really subject to the agreement between the township and RPM developments, and that'll occur at the governing body meetings as opposed to at this planning board meeting.
Okay, well, I hear that, but I also hear that people are voting on something and they don't have all the information, and this is really a critical issue in our community. As you know, there's a petition with thousands of people, over 1,000 people have signed it. You have people speaking at meetings tonight and the township committee meetings I'm sure you've heard about. So we clearly are very concerned. So I think it is important, and I do think it is relevant tonight. So forgive me being disagreeing with you on that. Why, I guess this is for Ms. Zoll, why are these meetings not held in person? I was looking at the notice about tuning in on Zoom, and it says that these Zoom meetings are to be held under an emergency order or when the town hall is closed. That hasn't been the case for a long time. Why are these still on Zoom? Why aren't we able to gather in person and be able to be a community together talking about something transformational like this tonight, and we're doing it on Zoom? I just wondered.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. As is very much the case at our May meeting, when I had not tested positive. I was in fact positive and tested positive the next day. I think we've still very much have COVID transmitting in our community, and we determine it because of our board, the size of our board and the proximity which we would need to sit on the dais. We don't have a physical site where we can gather right now. Our township committee is a board of 5 members. It's a lot smaller. We have not determined it to be safe, to be able to be physically distanced in a safe manner.
I hear that, but I find that a bit of I understand it, I do, but I also feel that we have many buildings in our township that this meeting could be held with plenty of space, including the high school auditorium and other places. And I think something like this should have been held in person. So that's just my personal point of view. The issue about consistency between the fair share settlement and land use laws, I heard that discussed. I think Deborah brought that up and Beth talked about it. What about the consistency with our master plan? Like the overall plan that's been, like what has been done to look at what was agreed for this township versus what is now being imposed by this fair share settlement? And has there been areas identified that really just aren't consistent with the vision for this township that would mean the plan, elements of the plan just don't work?
So in terms of master plan consistency, a couple things. So in part, I'm going to punt on that to Graham, your township planner, but I also just want to, before I do that, I want to highlight the fact that the settlement agreement here, like just about every other settlement, was required to be executed before the municipality could undergo a much larger, more comprehensive master plan process. And as a result of that, what we have here this evening is the municipality really being tasked with implementing the settlement agreement rather than being given an opportunity to execute a settlement agreement and then take a step back as to whether or not it chooses to implement it. In fact, it's really directly tasked with, now that you've executed the settlement agreement, it's time to implement it. One of the first steps is adoption of a housing element and fair share plan. In terms of master plan consistency, I'll defer to Graham if there's any commentary he might like to make on that topic.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that the fair share housing, they are able to supersede a township or municipality's desires through its master plan for what it wants its community to be.
I mean, I think the entire part, the purpose of the Mount Laurel doctrine is to see a municipality implement zoning changes that would provide for new opportunities for low and moderate income households. And just by its very nature, that's going to need inconsistencies with zoning and most likely inconsistencies with its existing master plan. So in that regard, Millburn is really no different than what we see. I would refrain from saying this is a fair share housing center issue or a problem. It's really inherent in the entire nature of the process. Fair share housing center just happened to be one of the main parties in the litigation.
And then would you say that some municipalities have done this better than others? For example, in April 2018, we submitted a plan, and within months, we could have adopted inclusionary zoning. We could have adopted a redevelopment fee. We could have surveyed all existing units that needed rehab and so forth, which we did not do. In addition, a declaratory judgment action plan was submitted, and it was 3 days late after the deadline of the court. So, there is a quality issue, I think, that I would, based on what you said, there is a quality issue. I think it was even noted in your, on page 12, you said, basically lost race to the courthouse. So I mean, we didn't do the right thing in April of 2018 as a township committee. So I just want to, I mean, it's really more of a comment. I don't really want to hear what you have to say about it, because I think the facts speak for themselves. And you did say it in your report. So
I know you don't want to hear my response, but I have to just say one thing.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. It's fine.
I just don't want people to think that if the 2018 housing plan had been adopted and implemented and you had adopted the ordinances that were proposed or suggested in that housing plan, that plan would have been approved by the court, and we would be sitting pretty, so to speak, with the judgment of repose and immunity from builder's friendly litigation. There's really no reason to.
No one has a crystal ball, and no one should rewrite history either. We should tell it like it is, with the facts and the statements. Another comment that I heard you say tonight, and I've heard you say it before, is that nothing was done in over 40 years. I really think that that's such a dishonorable statement to make, that we have an Upton sitting right there where we have affordable housing, and that was done within the 40-year time frame. There were other things done based on the laws at that time. So I just want to also clarify, my understanding anyway, from looking at everything over a long period of time, Millburn was not sitting on its hands. And this whole business of kicking the can down the road statement is very political. It's not true. Things were done. We have an actual project alive with people living in it in affordable units today. And that was a result of things that have been done. So I
think the Upton was about 40 years after the Mount Laurel 1 decision, though. And that's the issue, because the Mount Laurel 1 decision was in 1975. The Upton was approved in 2015, 2016 or so.
Other things at that time, during that period of time, were done that were allowable under the law. So I think you have to be honest about that. Because it's not a building that was built doesn't mean nothing was done. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so another point I wanted to raise is Millburn had no planning professional, as someone pointed out, during the fair share negotiations. I think that is a fact as well. You were not representing Millburn. The planning professional for Millburn was absent. There was no one. It was a ghost. So we had an attorney, however, that was representing us. He's here tonight. However, he admitted at a public meeting, I guess it was in March at the Millburn Middle School, that he represented the developer chosen by Millburn for the dump project, RPM, at 9 Main. This, as a regular resident, looks like a real conflict. I don't believe my interests or those of my neighbors were represented fairly, equitably, and properly in these negotiations as a result. So I just want to make that clear. Other communities such as Bridgewater, Hoboken, Sparta, they're fighting back and they are winning. Their elected officials and their land use boards are saying no to some of the projects that are being proposed by Fair Share. They're going back and saying no. So I don't think it's fair to be so, to use the language that sounds so fatal, like there's no way we can do anything. That is not true. Those elected officials and their appointed boards are listening to their residents and they are saying no. And I hope this board has done its homework to look at some of these recent decisions and votes that have been taken against some of the imposition coming from Fair Share Housing. We don't have a single feasibility study on our schools, traffic, flooding, safety, congestion, on any of the developments described in the plan. I know I heard, I guess Beth Saul say that as each project will come before the board, they can demand studies, but is there ever going to be an overall look at how all of this is going to impact, so that when you put each project in its context, you can see the cumulative effects, the marginal effects of each of these projects that are going to impact our community in every way: the schools, the traffic, flooding, safety, congestion, all of those issues, as well as environmental. Knowing that we have this phase 2 study ongoing, I think that we need to understand that as a community, and I think you should as a board. So I hope somebody can address that. Let's see, I just wanted to talk about, I just happened to randomly talk to somebody. I was doing a get out the vote thing on election day. And I talked to a gentleman named Joseph I think his name is Barbano. He said that he was a member of the Environmental Commission, I guess up until this year. And I looked at some minutes from December 2021, where he did speak. He said that, let's see, a concept plan needs to be submitted by 12/31 to the Council on Affordable Housing. There would be an extension at the end of February to choose a new location, waiting on environmental report for 11 Main, as contamination exists on that site. Joe Barbanel questioned if the response was needed to the environmental assessment by 12/31. Jorge stated a report was done and they are waiting on the outcome. Joe also asked if there was any discussion if the containment extends beyond DPW and includes the paper mill theater, old bike shop, storefront location. Who will resolve the remediation? Then what he said to me on the phone was really kind of very concerning. He said he told the commission that site was absolutely contaminated, that remediation was prohibited, and no housing should be built there. He was unequivocal in his condemnation of using the DPW 11 main, 9 main, whatever it is, for housing. He's a chemical engineer. He sat on the Environmental Commission, and I just wondered, where was his input channeled? Did anybody hear him ever say this? I mean, we had a guy that has a background in this who said that, and it looks like it was just totally ignored. So I wondered if anyone could address that at all. Probably not. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is there were about more than a dozen people that spoke at the May 17th Township Committee meeting. These are residents of our town. And I think there was a theme. I'll try not to be repetitive, but I think that I want you to hear, if you haven't watched that meeting or weren't aware of what people were saying. Some of these people were real pillars of our community. They have long established great reputations in the business community, the legal community, the FBI, whatever. And I think their points have to be listened to as well as what you're hearing tonight.
Okay, Ms. Pasternak, again, this is your questions and testimony, not recharacterizing others, please. I just want to make sure we're conscious of everybody's time.
These are quotes. You can look at the actual tape. I took the time.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Quote what people said. Okay. People were not aware. This is an Aaron Brockovich moment from Millburn. This is segregation. A lawyer representing Millburn represented RPM. That is a conflict. He ramrodded and used scare tactics. 2 TC members changed their minds. If in error, they are entitled to change their minds in regard to the 9 Main Street project. Low-income families already have challenges. The DPW site selection has impact on the quality of life on children. A petition with 1,100 signatures against 9 Main Street project has circulated in the community. I have grave concerns around the DPW site. Land is toxic, pending EPA studies, cost not determined, feasibility studies not conducted. Where will the recycling center be relocated? Slow down, revote, reconsider. Another person, as an attorney, looked at this objectively. 10 years from now, Millburn will get lots of lawsuits. Issues of stigma, congestion, safety of children walking to and from school. Mayor is a realtor and should not be voting on this. Next, got text yesterday and had no idea about this. There has been no transparency. Things can go south in a hurry. Putting this on the dump is a gigantic problem. Aaron Brockovich's suggestion is very true. People are not informed here in town. Next, attorney. They said they were an attorney. Do not build on the town dump. As soon as someone gets a headache, we are going to be hit with a $40 million settlement. You have no defense. Court won't care that it was a recycling center versus a dump. Every newspaper from LA to New York will cover this. The project will be condemned and torn down in 10 years. You have no choice. No attorney would advise you to do this project. Again, referring to 9 Main Street. Next, I am a retired FBI New York Division investigator. I have done successfully hundreds of investigations, labor, racketeering, corrupt cops, and so forth. Listening to this tonight, there are red flags all over the place. If I was in the job, I would be digging and investigating. This project, 9 Main Street, has risks to children and the town, and it makes no sense.
Okay, Ms. Pasternak, hopefully I think we're getting definitely the sense. I just want to make sure we get through it. Okay.
Okay. If anything's redundant, I'm not going to say it. You don't know, this was from I think he was a businessman. You don't know the finances of the project. What are we on the hook for? We have no idea what it will cost. It could be tens of millions of dollars. Postpone the decision until you have arms around the costs of the project. And let's see if there's anything new. It's really just more the same kind of stuff, but there's a lot of concern about the lack of transparency and violating the fair share housing rules with 100% project. Okay, so that's that group of people. Then on the petition itself, there were people who also wrote comments, and I think some of them are, again, relevant that may not be redundant with this, but one said, you're setting up low-income families on a contaminated site. This is wrong. The piece is too small. Where are the children of 75 families supposed to play, and where are all these people parking? Mixed income housing gives people a better start in town. This area is really close to middle school in downtown and would create a very congested and high traffic area, which is already tight. Having residents near the school playground in town will further increase high risk for kids and school children who are in that area morning to evening. This will produce traffic to a level that will hamper access to the hospital where I work. Let's see. I am deeply disappointed in township committee members who feel that the plan presented to us will reflect the values of Millburn. Are we really thinking that it is okay to sector off an area potentially contaminated almost under the railroad tracks, high wires next to the middle school in the center of town, and point out that those residents are only there because of low income? Surely we can do better than that.
So Ms. Pasternak, again, this is not your
done.
testimony. You're reading other people's, and I just want to we're going on and on. I want to. There are other people with their hands raised, so I want to make sure we get it.
Comments are on the
I appreciate it that if we have it and we have it in,
as
we have it documented.
As appointed officials who are making a decision that is transformative to our town, I think it's important that you hear from all of us, and there are different forms of doing that. There was a petition, and there were people who came to a public meeting. I appreciated that you listened. Thank you very much, and I hope that you can answer some of my questions that didn't get answered yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to mention two things. Number one, I've been accused of having represented RMP. Ms. Pasternak said that I made that statement. I never made that statement because I never represented RMP. She has her facts wrong. Secondly, one has to remember that the housing element and fair share plan that we are considering tonight is a part of the master plan. And as Ms. McManus mentioned, this aspect of the master plan is intended to fulfill the township's constitutional obligation and for providing a realistic opportunity for the construction of affordable housing. And insofar as it may be inconsistent with other aspects of the master plan, the constitutional obligation of the township trumps legislative provisions if they are not consistent with the Constitution. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to say, someone stood up.
Ms.
If it wasn't you,
I'm sorry.
No, you called me a liar, so
No,
I
didn't call you.
I need to defend my
He
reputation.
corrected a statement that was made.
That's fine, but it's on record. There's a recording of that meeting. It was held at the Millburn Middle School. I am certain that I heard that, but if I didn't,
Ms. Pasternak, I'm sorry, you did not hear that correctly because I've never represented them. Never had anything to do with RPF.
Possibly
You go back and you can check the facts and you will find that it was not Edward Buzak who made any such comment.
Fine. I will double check what I heard and what has been recorded. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments or responses at this time?
Just add to Mr. Buzak's comment regarding consistency with the master plan, his comments. I did just want to note for the benefit of the board and the public that goal number 1 of the 2018 master plan, objective 1.05, does state the following statement: create the realistic opportunity to provide for the township's fair share of the region's affordable housing. So affordable housing is an objective, and providing for is an objective of the current adopted master plan for the township. I just wanted to make reference for that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Graham. Okay, thank you for your comments. We still have, I think, 3 folks. Mr. Feld, you should be with us, and